You may be wondering, hey, if his name is Archer, why does he use so many swords in his animations? To which the answer is, it's complicated. The Archer class really is made up of archers. I promise you. You may also be wondering, what are Archer's best teams? And how should I build him? To which the answer is, you clicked on the right video. After personally playtesting Archer for many hours, I'm here to tell you what Archer does, who his best teammates are, how to build him, and all the good stuff. After all of our accounts will be getting him for free, so everyone should definitely be building him. If you don't need an explanation on how his kit works, skip to this timestamp. When the free Doctor Ratio first came out in 1.6, he was at the very top of the meta, despite being a free unit. I still remember how much praise Hoyo was getting for making a free character so powerful. Does Archer continue the legacy left for him by the previous free male 5-star hunt unit? Let's see. Archer is a quantum hunt character, and also our very first quantum male ever. 2 years in, guys. Am I the only one who finds that crazy? His basic attack is nothing special, aside from the fact that he's an archer attacking with swords. His skill is where things get really interesting. Archer's skill puts him in the circuit connection state. While in this state, Archer pulls out his bow and arrow and can repeatedly cast his skill without his turn ending, up to a maximum of 5 times or until he runs out of skill points. Think of it like Qingque. When Qingque presses her skill, she activates gambling mode. Then, she gets to keep pressing her skill to spend skill points to gamble, and her turn won't end no matter how many times she keeps pressing her skill to gamble, up until you've drained all your SP to the gamble gods trying to replicate Aventurine's luck. Archer's skill works the exact same as Qingque's in terms of mechanics, but instead of each cast of his skill gambling with the tile, each cast of his skill just chucks a giant arrow bomb at the enemy's head, dealing massive single target damage. He gives himself a massive damage percent boost each time he chucks an arrow while in this circuit connection state, stacking up to 2 times for 200% damage bonus. Oh, did I forget to mention each cast of his skill costs 2 skill points? Yeah, he's guzzling skill points even harder than Qingque. And again, once he runs out of skill points to use, he exits this stance and ends his turn. He can also choose when to end the turn if you don't want to spend all of your skill points chucking arrows. Already he's sounding a lot like a 5-star Qingque, huh? It's clear to me that her mechanics were a big inspiration for his kit design, except without all the gambling. Imagine if Qingque got to chuck a tile each time she gambles with her skill. That's Archer. Archer's ultimate is the literal name of his anime/visual novel route, Unlimited Blade Works, or more accurately,
Unlimited Blade Works.
Despite having a literal infinite amount of swords at his disposal, Archer instead launches all of them at only one enemy, dealing a massive single target nuke. It's a pretty simple ultimate. It also grants him 2 stacks of charge. It's just called charge. I don't really understand why Hoyo didn't give it some sort of name. They usually assign super complicated names to literally every part of a character's kit, even the unnecessary things, but I guess Archer's stacks are just called charge. Huh. Anyway, these stacks of charge are used up by his talent, where he consumes 1 charge to launch a follow-up attack after an ally attacks an enemy. He can hold up to 4 charges, which would require 2 ultimates. And again, when any ally hits an enemy, he will spend 1 charge to launch a follow-up attack. The damage of this follow-up attack isn't anything to write home about. It just does mild single target damage, but it also generates 1 skill point, which is very relevant considering how Archer makes Qingque seem like a skill point positive queen. In other words, since each Archer ultimate gives him 2 charges for 2 follow-up attacks, you could say his ultimate essentially generates 2 skill points in addition to being a huge nuke. His ultimate also has a hefty cost of 220, but since his playstyle incentivizes him to spam several skills per turn, so long as he has the skill points to do so, it's not as daunting as it may seem. Archer's technique is an attack, meaning you have to enter battle with it if you use it. It does damage to all enemies and grants him 1 charge for his follow-up attack at the start of battle. So basically, his technique just gives him an extra skill point at the start of battle. His major traces are all related to skill points. You can tell Saber's whole kit was designed around energy, while Archer's whole kit was designed around skill points. His first major trace gives him a massive crit damage boost whenever a teammate generates a skill point above 4. So if Gallagher does a basic attack to generate our skill points from 2 to 3, it won't give Archer this crit damage boost. On the other hand, as long as someone on the team brings the team to 4 skill points or higher before Archer's turn, then Archer basically will have a permanent 120% crit damage boost. His second trace is just a copy and paste of his technique. He starts the battle with 1 charge, aka 1 more skill point that he can get from his follow-up attack. His third trace is similar to Sparkle's. He increases the maximum skill point limit by 2, meaning you can have 7 skill points with Archer on the team, which increases to 9 if you have Sparkle on the team thanks to her talent, which then further increases to 10 if you have Sparkle's E4. And these are his stat traces. We'll cover this later, but Archer really wants to hit 100% crit rate, so having some crit rate here is nice. Now let's touch on Archer's Eidolons, and his E1 is a pretty major one. After using his skill 3 times, so after launching 3 arrows, Archer regains 2 skill points to essentially give himself a free 4th arrow. Keep in mind, this isn't just a free use of his skill. This is specifically a free use of his skill after he stacked up his full 200% damage bonus from his skill. While it may sound simple, Archer's E1 is absolutely nuts for him. He honestly feels like a completely different monster with his E1, and this is probably the bait Hoyo is counting on, giving him away for free and then dangling the juiciest E1 ever right in front of all of the new Archer Heavers. With that said, he still functions fine at E0. Don't go thinking you need his E1 to fix him or anything by any means, it just happens to be a really powerful increase. His E2 is Silverwolf's skill, Quantum Weakness Implant plus Res Shred. His E4 is perhaps the shortest description in the whole game, 150% damage bonus for his ultimate. As cracked as this sounds, his skill is where the majority of his damage comes from, not his ultimate. But it's still nice, since his ultimate does hit hard. And then his E6 grants 1 skill point at the start of Archer's turns. Note that each usage of his skill does not count as the start of a new turn, so he's not getting a skill point after every arrow. He also increases the stacking buff from his skill from 200% damage bonus to 300% damage bonus. And then there's the obligatory 20% defense ignore for his skill, the Hoyo Classic. Now it's time to move on to his teams. In Fate's Stay Night, the Archer class may have the skill of independent action, which allows Archer to act even without a master to tie him to this world. But make no mistake, Archer very much relies on certain teammates to perform to his maximum potential. Given the comparisons to Qingque, you can probably already guess his best in slot teammate. Sparkle is back from the dead, people. Sunday kicked her down for calling him a chicken wing boy, but she finally has a best in slot teammate once more. Now, you may be thinking, isn't Sunday technically just as skill point positive as Sparkle when he has his light cone? Because while Sparkle does generate 4 skill points on her ultimate, she also consumes 3 skill points over the course of a 3-turn rotation. So she's actually gobbling up most of her own skill points. But you see, while this may be true over the course of a fight, Sparkle's value lies in the way she front loads skill points so Archer can dump them all at once. After all, the way Archer works is that he spends multiple skill points all in one turn. Having Sparkle's ultimate ready to feed him 4 free skill points for him to consume is huge for Archer's damage and making him feel more comfortable to play. Additionally, Sparkle allows the team to hold up to 9 skill points with Archer, meaning you can stockpile a lot of skill points before Archer's turn to let him unleash. Furthermore, Sparkle's technique starts the team with 3 extra skill points, which is so vital for letting Archer completely unleash on the enemies on his first turn in order to clear as quickly as possible. It's not an exaggeration to say that Archer literally feels like he was made for Sparkle. While you can make him work without Sparkle, you will be able to feel her absence. For Sparkle replacements, your first thoughts would probably be Sunday and Hanya. First off, Hanya is basically only +1 skill point per turn if you're also spamming her own skill, which is the same as any character that spams basic attacks, such as Pela. Her skill point generation only really starts to pull ahead when she's fast enough to weave in basic attacks before needing to refresh her skill, which happens when her teammates don't attack enough to proc her skill quickly enough. Now, Hanya feels better than a basic attack spammer like Pela because of the way her skill can refresh skill points during Archer's turn in the middle of his arrow chucking, but that's the only thing Hanya has going for her. Unfortunately, in terms of buffs, she of course falls behind all of the 5-star Harmony units, so you will definitely notice a drop in Archer's damage. Her speed buff is just never going to be as useful as an action advance for Archer either. Now, Sunday with his light cone is capable of rivaling Sparkle's SP positivity over the course of a drawn out fight, but we've already covered why Sparkle's front loaded SP makes her synergize better with Archer. With that said, Sunday does work. You can either play Hyperspeed Sunday, where he's mimicking Sparkle to the best of his ability, or there is also the -1 speed setup, where you make Archer just barely faster than Sunday, where Archer always uses his basic attack, and then Sunday pulls him back up so that Archer can use his skill. This basically lets Archer pay for the skill point Sunday is consuming by basic attacking before Sunday's turn, and it's only doable thanks to Sunday's action advance being 100% compared to Sparkle's 50% action advance. With that said, it does require building speed boots on Archer, but it results in Archer having more skill points to spend during his turn, and it especially felt worth it with E1 Archer since you really want to have enough skill points to reach that 3rd arrow with his E1. Lastly, I'll just mention Pela as another potential Sparkle replacement. The skill point generator slot on Archer teams is mandatory, and Pela can function better than most other buffers/debuffers while being completely skill point positive, since she can get her ultimate fast even with spamming basic attacks, which lets her use the Eagle set really well to get even more turns to spam even more basic attacks and generate even more skill points. Her damage amplification isn't on the level of the 5-stars, but if you've got nothing else, then she can be Archer's skill point generator. So we've got a slot for Archer, a skill point generator, and a sustain, who is ideally also generating skill points. This means the last slot is dedicated to buffing Archer's damage as much as possible. Tribby is Tribby. Even despite Archer not being an AoE character, Tribby's buffs are still very potent, and there was even some special synergy I found between them, where when Archer uses his ultimate and gives himself charges for his follow-up attack, Tribby will of course also follow-up attack after Archer's ultimate, and her follow-up attack would in turn trigger Archer's follow-up attack, regenerating 1 skill point for him. Now, this may seem like such an obvious thing, but the reason I'm giving it a special mention is because Archer often ends up getting enough energy to use his ultimate during his skill stance, because he's spamming his skill. Thus, if he uses his ultimate in the middle of using his skill, and Tribby follow-up attacks to give him a skill point, it'll generate 1 skill point for him via his own follow-up attack while he's still in his skill stance, oftentimes granting him an extra use of his skill. As I stated before with Sparkle, Archer doesn't just want skill points. He wants skill points at specific timings, and Tribby's ability to give him a skill point from their follow-up attacks chaining off of each other right at the exact moment he wants just made them feel really good together. And of course, Tribby holding Dance 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 is always a plus for her. But Tribby actually has some very steep competition from our newest quantum buffer, or debuffer, Cypher. Cypher's 40% vulnerability debuff is very potent, and the way her patron stacking works synergizes nicely with Archer. You see, Cypher stacks her ultimate damage based on the amount of damage received by the enemy marked as the patron. This makes her synergize especially well with super strong single target nukers, such as Fei Xiao, and now, such as Archer, who dishes out so much single target damage to the target marked as Cypher's patron, and in turn, granting her so many coins to stack up to nuke a boss from half HP. Archer is definitely one of the characters who makes best use of Cypher. But wait! A third quantum buffer has entered the competition. Debuffer. The buffed Silverwolf is finally here to reclaim her title as the queen of debuffing. Silverwolf's damage amplification has always been super high in single target scenarios, but she just struggled to find a place in the meta because every single hunt unit was either a follow-up attack unit or boot hill, meaning Silverwolf had no place on their teams despite having really strong single target damage amplification. Finally, Archer is here as a traditional hypercarry hunt unit, meaning Silverwolf would immediately become one of his strongest teammates even before her buffs. Her buffs obviously make her way more comfortable to play though, giving her more energy along with her ultimate being AoE now, which offers Archer more flexibility in switching targets. Not to mention Archer and Silverwolf sharing an element for her quantum weakness implant enables him even further. Archer is the character Silverwolf has been waiting 2 years for. I will say that she tends to be less skill point positive than Cypher since you're incentivized to use Silverwolf's skill at some points, but on the other hand, she can also spam her ultimate more effectively and use the Eagle set for more speed, for more turns, for more skill points. Other buffers include the likes of Ruan Mei and Zhao Chou, who are both what I like to call set it and forget it buffers / debuffers. You slot them on the team and let their auras do the work. They aren't as potent as the Quantum Trio. Surprise, surprise, Archer actually likes an almost mono quantum team, but they can work, especially given that Ruan Mei is basically a free unit now. So, would I recommend pulling for the likes of Sparkle and Silverwolf specifically for Archer? It depends on how badly you want to invest in him, but in general, I would say to be cautious about it. Don't get me wrong, these characters are super strong with Archer. Dare I even say Sparkle plus Silverwolf makes up Archer's best team. But pulling for characters that might not see as much usage outside of a single team is always a bit suspicious. Archer is really strong for accounts that already have Sparkle, but otherwise, I cannot in good faith recommend people pull for Sparkle just to use Archer unless you really love him. And again, while he will work without Sparkle, you will feel her absence. As for sustains, Gallagher is the obvious option. He's super skill point positive and yeah, he's super skill point positive. That's basically it. And that's basically all Archer wants from a sustain. Hyacinth is another honorable mention. While most people are probably used to using Hyacinth's skill a lot in Casterus teams, Hyacinth technically can be played completely skill point positive. She naturally builds super fast, which lets her generate a lot of skill points for Archer. And while she won't be doing as much damage when she's played skill point positive, she's still keeping your team alive just fine while generating skill points. And she does still contribute some damage, unlike Gallagher. Luocha is a more comfortable Gallagher in terms of sustain, with slightly less skill point generation. He works just fine. If you want to go full mono quantum and you need Fu Xuan to hit 100% crit rate for Archer, then she can be another option. But there's no need to go mono quantum now that Silverwolf can guarantee a quantum implant even without it. And Fu Xuan requiring a skill point every 3 turns really doesn't make her ideal with Archer. Now for builds, Archer has 2 main relic sets, the Scholar set and the Genius set. The Genius set pulls ahead when against quantum weak enemies, and you can always guarantee quantum weakness when paired with Silverwolf. However, the Scholar set is just fine if that's what you have. For planners, use Rudolin Arena, and don't ever consider anything else. Archer is a traditional hypercarry crit DPS. He wants most of the same stats as other attack scaling crit DPSs. I highly recommend running a crit rate body unless you have amazing pieces that allow you to hit 100% crit rate with a crit damage body. While missing a crit on any DPS is painful, the reason it's especially bad on Archer is because you are spending 2 skill points every time you launch an arrow. Missing a crit at the cost of 2 skill points is such a heavy price to pay. Trust me, just try to max out his crit rate. Archer feels like he suffers even more than other characters if he doesn't crit. Remember, he basically has a free 120% crit damage from his talent as long as you manage skill points well. And Sparkle also buffs crit damage by nearly 100%. So sacrificing crit damage stats for crit rate in your relics is always going to be worth it. Run Archer on attack boots, since Sparkle will always bring him up to her action value anyway. The only exception for this is if you're running him in a -1 speed setup with Sunday, where you're playing the Archer basic attack into Sunday skill into Archer skill spam playstyle, in which case Archer needs speed boots. Again, I mainly only recommend this playstyle if your Archer is E1 and you don't have Sparkle. For Orb, Quantum Damage and Attack Orb were both very competitive with each other. He gets a stacking 200% damage bonus in his skill, which helps Attack Orb do essentially equivalent damage as a damage percent orb. Use whichever one has better substats. For Rope, it should only ever be attack percent rope. Please do not play Super Break Archer. Now, I want to touch on the builds of his supports for a second, primarily Sparkle's build, because there are some interesting tips and tricks that I found. First and foremost, Sparkle's best in slot light cone is Sunday's signature light cone. I'm aware of how ironic that is, but it is what it is. Her ultimate doesn't count towards any of the light cone's effects, but even so, getting more energy and more skill points every 2 skill usages is so strong for Archer. Of course, I'm aware that you'll probably want to use this light cone on Sunday, assuming you didn't pull for his light cone without having him for some reason, so other options like Branya's signature, Dance Dance Dance, or of course Sparkle's own signature work just fine. Do not pull Sunday's signature just to use it on Sparkle in Archer teams. That's crazy. But if you happen to have all the pieces and your Sunday doesn't need his light cone, maybe throw a bone to Sparkle and let her play with Sunday's toy. Additionally, while I am always a proponent of using the Eagle set on Sparkle, I actually found it to be detrimental in a lot of cases when played with Archer. Archer doesn't just want skill points. He wants skill points at specific times. Giving Sparkle Eagle set would oftentimes have her overtaking the sustain, and you would wind up in situations where she's giving Archer turns with only enough skill points for 1 or 2 arrows, because the sustain didn't get to take a turn and generate a skill point, or you didn't get to spend Archer's follow-up attacks to generate skill points, because Sparkle brought him up too quickly. So I prefer Sparkle on Sacerdos when played with Archer, and I prefer playing her slower than the sustain unit. Don't make Sparkle slow by any means, just make the sustain super fast so that you can time your skill point generation properly. Both Sparkle and the sustain being above 160 speed is ideal. For Archer's light cone, his signature gives him that much needed crit rate he desires, plus a ramping attack bonus. Hey, you know what gives similar stats, but is free? The Herda Shop Hunt light cone. Granted, the attack bonus on cruising is even more conditional, and I wouldn't rely on that attack bonus by any means. I also wouldn't rely on the crit rate condition of enemies being below 50% HP, so cruising is more of a crit rate stat stick, but that's good enough for Archer because of how badly he desires crit rate. The new Battle Pass light cone is also really good for him because of its skill damage buff, so you can definitely consider grabbing that one for him if you're a Battle Pass buyer and don't need any of the other Battle Pass light cones. Most of the limited hunt light cones are pretty good as stat sticks for Archer because they give crit stats and have high base attack stats compared to cruising. None of them buff his skill damage, so it's not like any of them are particularly synergistic with his playstyle, but they can all work and be a bit more consistent than cruising if you have them lying around and can still hit 100% crit rate on Archer. And just for the record, Archer's E1 is always a higher priority than his signature light cone. Again, Archer's E1 is absolutely nuts on him, but if you're choosing between his E1 and Sparkle, then probably Sparkle. But again, refer to all my warnings earlier about pulling Sparkle just for Archer. So how does Archer feel to play? Honestly, he's the trickiest character out of the 3.4 units for sure. While Saber seems like she has a lot of complex mechanics with her action advancing and energy refilling, she still felt pretty straightforward. Archer requires proper skill point management and proper targeting, as most hunt characters require in most encounters where there's more than one enemy. Without Sparkle, I would even argue he's uncomfortable to play. I'm certain you'll see Archer mains proving that he can still clear in a low amount of cycles just fine without Sparkle, but I definitely wouldn't expect that to be the norm. So just know what you're getting yourself into. Because if you plan on being an Archer main without Sparkle, then just be aware. That's hell you're walking into.
おい、その先は地獄だぞ。
Thank you so much for watching! I know we're all excited about getting Archer for free, and you should be. He's a ton of fun, and I can't wait to see what people are able to do with him now that he'll be on everybody's account. I personally have both Sparkle and Silverwolf already, so I'm excited to see what I can do with him on my main account. Are you planning on using Archer since you're getting him for free? Tell me in the comments below. There will be plenty more guide content on this channel for upcoming characters, and I have like 3 different videos about Finan currently in the works, so subscribe to the channel if you want more content like this, and like this video if you found it helpful or enjoyable. I really appreciate you watching and sticking until the end. I stream over on Twitch and post on Twitter, so follow me on those platforms to keep up with me. Until next time!